My name's Jake, and I'm 25 now, but this story starts when I was just 12. Back then, I thought my family was pretty average. Not rich, not poor, just typical. My parents, Lisa and Mark, were the kind of folks who always seemed busy, but not in a neglectful way, at least not at first glance. Then there was my sister Sarah, the golden child. Smart, talented, and constantly showered in praise. If she aced a test, it was framed and hung on the wall. If I brought home an A, I got a thumbs up and a nice job, Jake. I didn't hate Sarah for it. She was just being herself, and it wasn't her fault our parents treated her like a precious gem while I was the background noise. I tried to convince myself it didn't bother me, but the truth is it cut deep. I felt invisible in my own home like a forgotten photograph tucked behind the shiny ones on the mantle. It all fell apart one sweltering August afternoon. I was in my room flipping through a comic book trying to distract myself from the heat when I heard my mom's voice calling me downstairs. Her tone was off. That weird mix of forced calm and hidden urgency that adults think kids don't notice. I trudged down expecting the usual lecture about chores or grades. Instead, I found them sitting on the couch side by side, their faces twisted in a mix of guilt and resignation. My dad's arms were crossed, his jaw tight, while my mom tried to muster a sympathetic smile that looked more like a grimace. "Sit down, Jake," Dad said, gesturing to the worn armchair across from them. My heart started racing. This felt serious, too serious for a missed homework assignment or a forgotten trash day. Mom took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling just a bit, "about something important." My first thought was that maybe someone had died. Maybe my grandparents. But that didn't make sense. They'd just posted photos from their beach vacation last week. No, this was something else, something worse. We've been struggling financially. Dad cut in his tone, flat and direct. Things have gotten tight. I just stared at them, not fully understanding where this was headed. "We've made a difficult decision," Mom continued, her eyes darting around the room as if the family photos might offer her some comfort. "We can't afford to take care of you anymore." I blinked, trying to process her words. What did that even mean? Was this some kind of sick joke? I felt my chest tighten as I searched their faces for a hint of a prank, but there was none. Just cold, detached finality. What do you mean?" I stammered. "You're sending me away?" Mom reached out like she wanted to comfort me, but I leaned back instinctively, pulling away. "Jake, this isn't about you. It's just, we can't keep up. Sarah's education is a priority, and we need to make sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" I echoed, my voice cracking. "So I'm the sacrifice?" My dad's jaw clenched tighter, his eyes fixed on a spot on the carpet. "It's temporary," he said. But his tone made it clear that he was just saying the words to soften the blow. "You'll be placed with a foster family. They can give you the stability we can't right now." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Foster care. They were dumping me like some unwanted piece of old furniture. I could feel my hands shaking, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Why not Sarah?" I shot back, anger flaring through the numbness. "Why not send her to a foster home?" Mom's face hardened, her tone turning sharp. "Sarah has a bright future. She needs stability to focus on her studies." I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, but the look in my dad's eyes stopped me. It was like he'd already shut the door in his mind, like he'd moved on the second they made this decision. The next day, they packed a small bag for me. Just a few clothes, some toiletries, and my worn-out comic collection. They didn't even bother to ask if I wanted to bring anything else. It felt like they were stripping me down to the basics, reducing me to a problem that needed to be solved. The drive to the foster home was silent. No goodbye hugs, no last-minute words of encouragement. Just the hum of the engine and the occasional turn signal. When we pulled up to a modest 2-story house with a tidy lawn, my mom glanced back at me in the rearview mirror. "We'll keep in touch, Jake," she said, her voice thin and unconvincing. "This isn't goodbye forever." But it felt like it. It felt final. They didn't even walk me to the door. They just popped the trunk, handed me my duffel bag, and watched as I trudged up the steps. My new foster parents, the Thompsons, were waiting for me on the porch. They seemed nice enough, but I barely noticed. I was too busy trying not to look back, too afraid that if I did, I'd break down right there on their neatly swept steps. As the car pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of my parents through the back window. They didn't wave. They didn't even slow down. Just a smooth, emotionless drive away from their unwanted son. That night, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed of a stranger's house, I replayed every moment in my head, searching for something I'd done wrong. Some mistake that made me expendable. But nothing came, just the hollow echo of their words, We can't afford you. And that was the night I stopped being their son. The first few nights at the Thompsons' house felt like being in a stranger's guest room, a place I wasn't sure I was allowed to get comfortable in. I kept my bag half-packed, my clothes folded in neat little piles on the dresser, as if I might be yanked out of this life at any moment. The Thompsons tried to make me feel at home. Mrs. Thompson, a kind woman with a permanent smile and a talent for baking, would leave a glass of warm milk and a plate of cookies on the kitchen counter for me every night, like I was a little kid. Mr. Thompson, a broad-shouldered man with a booming laugh, would ruffle my hair whenever he passed me, calling me champ, like we had years of history instead of just a few awkward days. I didn't hate them. They seemed like genuinely nice people. But every time they smiled at me or tried to ask about my day, all I felt was resentment. I couldn't shake the thought that they were part of the reason my parents had felt comfortable enough to discard me. Like if there weren't nice people like the Thompsons around, maybe my parents would have tried harder to keep me. School started soon after I moved in. I showed up in the same old sneakers I'd worn all summer, my backpack still sporting a fraying patch of my favorite superhero. The hallways buzzed with the usual chaos of first-day energy. Kids comparing schedules, friends reuniting, lockers slamming shut in a metallic symphony. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact, just trying to get through the day without anyone asking me where I was from or why I was new. It wasn't long before the whispers started, though. Word travels fast in a small school, and I quickly became that foster kid, the one with the sad eyes and the quiet steps. The teachers were nice enough, but their pity was almost worse than the whispers. They'd smile a bit too widely, speak a bit too softly, like they expected me to crumble at any moment. One day during lunch, a kid named Ryan slid into the seat across from me in the cafeteria. He had that effortless cool I'd always envied. Messy blonde hair, a chipped skateboard always hanging from his backpack, and a grin that said he wasn't afraid of anything. "You're the new guy, right, Jake?" he asked, popping open a can of soda with a hiss. "Yeah," I muttered, keeping my eyes on my sandwich. "Foster kid," he pressed, not even trying to be subtle. I tensed, waiting for the inevitable follow-up, some snide comment or invasive question. But instead, Ryan just shrugged. "Cool. Want to come to the skate park after school? I could use someone to race." I blinked, caught off guard. I wasn't a skater. I barely knew how to balance on a board, let alone race someone like him. But the way he asked so casually, like it wasn't a big deal, made me say, sure. That afternoon, I found myself at the cracked concrete playground that served as the town's unofficial skate park. Ryan was there, kicking his board up into his hands and nodding at me as I approached. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, a grin breaking across his face. "Me neither." I admitted dropping my bag by a rusty metal bench, and we spent the next hour wiping out, laughing, and occasionally actually skating. I crashed more than I rolled my knees and elbows, quickly accumulating fresh bruises, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like a normal kid. By the time the sun dipped below the rooftops, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement, I was out of breath and grinning like an idiot. "Not bad for a first-timer," Ryan said, giving me a mock punch on the shoulder as we walked home. From that day on, Ryan became my first real friend at the new school. He never pried into my past, never asked the kinds of questions that made me want to clam up. He treated me like a regular kid, which I realized was exactly what I needed. But even as I started to settle into this new life, I couldn't shake the ghost of my old one. I'd catch myself staring at my phone, willing it to ring to light up with a message from my parents. But the days turned into weeks, and nothing came. No calls, no texts, no letters, just a deafening, soul-crushing silence. One afternoon, after another failed attempt at a kickflip, Ryan and I sat on the edge of the skate park watching a group of middle schoolers try and fail to land simple tricks. "Hey, you ever think about running away?" Ryan asked suddenly, his voice low, almost lost in the scrape of wheels on concrete. I snorted, thinking about how I had basically been run out of my own home. "Already did," I said, my voice a bit too bitter. Ryan glanced at me, his eyes catching the meaning behind my words. He didn't push it, just nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get it." I never asked what he meant, and he never explained. But in that quiet, shared understanding, something solidified between us. A friendship built not just on shared laughs and bruised knees, but on the unspoken weight we both carried. For the first time since my parents had left me on that porch, I felt like I had something close to a real connection. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could find a place in this world where I didn't feel so disposable. Ryan and I grew closer over the next few months. He had this way of making the world feel a little less heavy, his easy laughter cutting through the gloom that had settled over my life. He never asked about my past, never pushed for answers about my parents or the foster system. That unspoken agreement made our friendship feel safe, like a quiet refuge in a chaotic world. The Thompsons, for their part, continued to show me the kind of kindness that felt foreign at first. Mrs. Thompson would check my grades not with the critical eye of someone looking for flaws, but with genuine interest. Mr. Thompson invited me to help him fix up his old truck, teaching me how to change oil and replace brake pads. His deep voice rumbling through explanations I'd never gotten from my own dad. But even as I started to settle into this new life, I couldn't shake the ghost of my past. Late at night, when the house creaked in the quiet darkness, I'd find myself scrolling through my phone searching for some sign of my parents. A social media post, an old family picture, anything that proved they hadn't completely erased me from their lives. Then one evening, I found it. I stumbled across my mom's Instagram, a bright grid of sunsets, beach vacations, and smiling selfies. She looked different, lighter, happier, like the weight of raising a second kid had been lifted off her shoulders. In one post, she and my dad stood side by side on a yacht, their faces sun-kissed and carefree. The caption read, "Living our best lives, free and thriving." Free and thriving. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just that they had moved on without me. It was that they seemed better for it. Like my absence had somehow improved their lives. My fingers tightened around my phone as I scrolled through their posts. There were photos of my sister Sarah grinning in her graduation cap, blowing out candles on a cake, clutching a shiny new car key with a red bow on top. The kind of moments they'd never shared with me. They'd left me behind to chase their dream life, and it looked like they'd found it. I felt my chest tighten, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, to do something, anything to shake off the rage boiling inside me. But instead, I just sat there, my mind numb, my heart hollow. The next day, I was quieter than usual. Even Ryan noticed, nudging me with his elbow as we walked to class. "You good, man?" He asked, his skateboard clattering against his leg with each step. "Yeah," I mumbled, forcing a tight smile. "Just tired." But I wasn't just tired. I was furious, hurt, betrayed. The realization that my parents hadn't just abandoned me, they'd erased me, felt like a fresh wound every time I thought about it. A few weeks later, Mrs. Thompson found me sitting on the back porch staring blankly at the fading autumn leaves. She sat down beside me, the old wooden steps creaking under her weight. "You've been quiet lately," she said gently, folding her hands in her lap. "Is everything okay?" I hesitated, my fingers curling into my palms. I wanted to tell her to unload the tangled mess of anger and grief that had been festering inside me, but the words wouldn't come. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, didn't want to admit how much it still hurt that my own parents had given up on me. Instead, I just shrugged, forcing a weak smile. "Just school stuff. It's nothing." She studied me for a long moment, her eyes full of that quiet, unspoken understanding that only comes from living through pain yourself. She reached over, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Well, if you ever want to talk, we're here," she said, her voice soft and sincere. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thanks." After she went back inside, I sat there for a long time, the cool autumn air prickling my skin. For the first time, I let myself consider the possibility that maybe I didn't need my parents to be okay. Maybe the family I'd lost wasn't the only kind I could have. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the cracks in the ceiling, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let their rejection define me. I'd carve out a new life, a better life, one where I wasn't just someone's forgotten son. I didn't know exactly what that would look like yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done waiting for my parents to care. Life with the Thompsons slowly shifted from strange to comfortable. I stopped flinching every time Mr. Thompson clapped me on the back or Mrs. Thompson called me down for dinner in that warm, sing-song voice. I even started leaving my backpack on the kitchen counter instead of hauling it up to my room every afternoon, a small but significant step in letting my guard down. Ryan and I had settled into a steady rhythm too. We skated almost every day, our bruises becoming badges of honor. He dragged me into his world. Late-night bonfires at the abandoned lot behind the hardware store, secret trails through the woods, half-pipes, and forgotten corners of town. For the first time in years, I felt like I had something close to a normal teenage life. But my past still haunted me. I couldn't ignore it no matter how hard I tried to bury it beneath layers of new memories. One day, as I was stuffing my notebook into my backpack at the end of history class, a girl named Chloe leaned over my desk. She had this bright, curious energy about her, the kind that made people instinctively smile back even on their worst days. "Hey, Jake," she said, twirling a pencil between her fingers. "Are you coming to the homecoming dance next week?" I blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever asked me to a dance before. Back in my old life, I'd always been too invisible for that kind of thing. The kid on the sidelines, unnoticed and unremarkable. I hadn't really thought about it, I stammered, feeling my face heat up. She tilted her head, her blue eyes sparkling with amusement. Well, you should come. It'll be fun. Besides, she added with a playful grin, I hear you've got some decent dance moves. I huffed a laugh, shaking my head. Who told you that? Ryan, she said, rolling her eyes. He's been hyping you up all week. Of course he had. Ryan loved throwing me into awkward situations just to see me squirm his own twisted form of friendship. All right, I'll think about it, I said, trying to sound casual as I slung my backpack over my shoulder. She flashed me a bright smile, tossing her hair over one shoulder. Good. I'll save you a dance. As I watched her bounce out of the classroom, my heart thudding in my chest, I felt a strange flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could have a normal life after all. That night over dinner, I must have been quieter than usual because Mrs. Thompson shot me a curious look as she passed the salad bowl. Everything okay, Jake? She asked, her brow creasing with concern. I hesitated, my fork hovering over my plate. Should I tell them about the dance, about Chloe? It felt weird, like sharing a piece of myself I wasn't ready to expose. But then I thought about that promise I'd made to myself, to stop letting my past hold me back. Actually, yeah, I said, clearing my throat. A girl at school invited me to the homecoming dance. Mr. Thompson's eyes lit up, a grin stretching across his face. Well, look at you, kid. Got yourself a date already. I flushed, ducking my head. It's not like that. She just asked if I was going, that's all. Mrs. Thompson clapped her hands together, her face beaming. Oh, that's wonderful, Jake. We'll have to get you a nice shirt, maybe even a tie. Oh, and you'll need a corsage for her. I chuckled, shaking my head. Slow down, Miss T. I haven't even said yes yet. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea started to grow on me. I imagined walking into the gym, the thump of bass-heavy music vibrating through the floor, the swirl of colored lights reflecting off the polished basketball court. I imagined Chloe's bright laughing face, her warm hand in mine. I made up my mind that night. I was going to the dance. The next week flew by in a blur of late-night YouTube dance tutorials because there was no way I was going to embarrass myself in front of Chloe, awkward attempts at small talk in the hallways and nervous glances in her direction during lunch. When Friday finally rolled around, I found myself standing in front of the mirror in the Thompsons' hallway, fidgeting with the tie Mr. Thompson had lent me. It was a bit too long, the fabric a little scratchy, but it made me feel grown up, I guess, like I was stepping into a new version of myself. Mrs. Thompson snapped a quick photo, her eyes misty with that weird parental pride I still wasn't used to. You look so handsome, Jake, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I managed a sheepish grin, my hands sweaty and my heart pounding. Thanks, Mrs. T, I mumbled, ducking my head as she pulled me into a tight hug. As I walked out the door, the cool evening air biting at my skin, I felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement swirling in my chest. I was scared, sure. Scared of making a fool of myself, scared of not fitting in, scared of letting someone get close enough to hurt me. But I was also ready to take another step forward, to keep building this new life, to stop looking back. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone in the world. The gym was a chaotic swirl of flashing lights, thumping bass, and sweaty teenagers swaying awkwardly to pop remixes. I paused just inside the door, adjusting my too long tie and scanning the crowd for a familiar face. It felt like stepping into another world, one where my past didn't matter and my future was still unwritten. Ryan spotted me first, grinning like a proud older brother as he pushed through the crowd, clapping me on the back with enough force to jolt the nerves right out of me. Hey, you made it, man, he shouted over the music, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Told you you'd clean up nice. I chuckled, my anxiety easing a bit. Thanks, dude. Figured I'd see what all the hype was about. He threw his arm around my shoulders, dragging me deeper into the pulsing crowd. Let's get you a drink before you pass out from the pressure. I followed him to the refreshment table, my heart still hammering in my chest as I scanned the room for Chloe. She was hard to miss, her blonde hair catching the shifting colored lights like strands of gold. She stood with a small group of friends near the makeshift DJ booth, laughing at something one of them said, her head thrown back, eyes crinkled in pure, unfiltered joy. My breath hitched, a wave of nerves threatening to drown the small spark of confidence I'd managed to build. But then she looked up, her eyes locking with mine across the crowded room. Her smile widened, and she gave a small wave, her fingers wiggling playfully. I felt my face heat up, but I managed to lift my hand in a shaky wave back, Dude, Ryan whispered, leaning in close as he handed me a cup of bright red punch. She's totally into you. I nearly choked on my first sip. Shut up, I mumbled, my eyes darting back to Chloe, who had turned back to her friends, still smiling. Ryan just smirked, giving me a gentle shove. Go talk to her, man. You've got this. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, and pushed my way through the crowd. Each step felt like a small victory, a defiance of the fear that had held me back for so long. When I finally reached her, my palms were sweaty, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. Hey! I managed, my voice coming out a bit shakier than I'd hoped. You, look amazing. She beamed, her eyes lighting up in a way that made my nerves melt a little. Thanks, Jake. You clean up pretty well yourself. For a moment, we just stood there, the thumping bass filling the space between us, her friends slipping away into the crowd to give us a bit of privacy. You want to dance? She asked, biting her lip in a way that made my stomach flip. I hesitated, the memory of those awkward late-night YouTube dance tutorials flashing through my mind. But then I remembered my promise to myself, to stop letting my past define me, to stop holding back out of fear. Yeah, I said, offering her my hand. I'd like that. She slipped her fingers into mine, pulling me toward the center of the dance floor. The music shifted to a slower song, the kind that made the gym lights feel a little softer, the air a little warmer. I wrapped my arms around her waist, my heart racing as I tried not to step on her feet. For a moment, the world around us faded, the whispers of my past drowned out by the simple, perfect reality of holding someone close, of being seen, of being wanted. When the song ended, she leaned in close, her lips brushing my ear. Thanks for coming tonight, Jake. I'm glad you did. I swallowed, my throat tight. Me too. We danced a few more songs, our movements growing less awkward with each beat, our laughter blending into the chaotic noise of the gym. I felt free, lighter than I had in years, the weight of my past slipping away with every step. As the night wore on, I found myself leaning against the bleachers with Chloe, our shoulders touching, our breaths mingling in the humid air. She tilted her head up at me, her eyes searching my face. Can I ask you something? She said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I tensed, my heart skipping a beat. Yeah, of course. Why'd you move here? I froze, the question hanging between us like a heavy fog. I could lie, give her the same vague excuse I'd given my teachers and classmates. Something about a fresh start, a new beginning. But as I looked into her bright, curious eyes, I realized I didn't want to lie to her. My parents, they left me, I said, my voice barely audible over the thumping bass. Put me in the foster system. Her eyes softened, her fingers tightening around mine. Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry. I forced a smile, shrugging like it didn't still cut me to the bone. It's fine, I'm better off now, I think, and she squeezed my hand, her eyes full of that quiet, unspoken understanding that had become all too familiar. You're not alone, you know. You've got people here. You've got me. For the first time in a long time, I let myself believe it. As the dance wound down and the crowd started to thin, I walked Chloe to her car, her hand still tucked into mine, our breaths misting in the cool night air. She paused beside the driver's side door, turning to face me, her eyes sparkling under the harsh flickering streetlight. I had a great time tonight, Jake, she said, her cheeks flushed, her smile genuine. Me too, I whispered, leaning in without thinking, my heart slamming against my ribs as my lips brushed hers in a soft, tentative kiss. When I pulled back, her eyes were wide, her breath coming in short, surprised bursts. See you Monday, she said, her voice a little shaky but her smile still bright. I grinned, my heart swelling with something dangerously close to hope. Yeah, see you Monday. As she drove away, her taillights disappearing into the night, I leaned back against the cool metal of the bleachers, my head spinning, my heart full. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally moving forward, finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. The weeks after the dance flew by in a blur of whispered jokes in crowded hallways, shared lunches under the flickering cafeteria lights, and late-night texts that stretched into the early hours. Chloe and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, our lives intertwining in a way that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Ryan, ever the supportive chaos agent, seemed to take personal pride in my blossoming social life, constantly ribbing me about my teen movie romance and threatening to make matching couple bracelets as a joke. I didn't mind, though. It felt good to have people in my corner, to feel like I was part of something real for once. But even as I started to find my place, my past still lurked in the shadows, a quiet, ever-present reminder of where I'd come from. I hadn't heard a word from my parents since they dropped me off at the Thompsons' doorstep, and part of me had made peace with that. But another part, the part that still felt like the scared, abandoned kid I'd once been, couldn't help but wonder if they ever thought about me. Then one cold November morning, the past came crashing back into my life in a way I hadn't expected. I was sitting in English class half listening to a lecture on Shakespeare while doodling in the margins of my notebook when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced around, making sure the teacher wasn't watching before sliding it out and sneaking a peek at the screen. A new message from my mom. I froze, my heart lurching in my chest as I stared at the screen, the tiny preview text blurring before my eyes. "Hey Jake, it's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Your dad and I would love to catch up sometime, maybe grab lunch. Let us know." I felt my stomach twist, a rush of conflicting emotions crashing over me like a tidal wave. Anger, hurt, confusion, hope. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath until my vision started to blur, my lungs burning as I forced myself to inhale. For a long moment, I just sat there, my phone clutched tightly in my hand, my heart thundering in my ears. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room to delete the message and pretend it had never come. But another part, the part that still ached for the family I'd lost, wanted to reply, to reach back across the chasm they'd created and see if maybe, just maybe, there was still a bridge to be rebuilt. I tucked my phone back into my pocket, my mind racing as the teacher droned on about tragic heroes and fatal flaws. I barely heard a word of it. My thoughts tangled in a knot of old wounds and unspoken questions. That night, I sat on my bed, my phone balanced on my knee as I stared at my mom's message, the cursor blinking accusingly in the empty reply box. What was I supposed to say? That I was fine, that I'd moved on, that I didn't need them anymore. Eventually, I typed a simple, cautious response. "Hey, I'm doing all right. Not sure about lunch, but I appreciate you reaching out. Hope you're doing well too." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, my heart pounding as the message disappeared into the digital void. I didn't hear back that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. Days turned into a week, then two, and still nothing. It was like I'd imagined the whole thing, like my parents had reached out on a whim and then forgotten about me all over again. I tried to bury the hurt, to focus on the good things in my life. Chloe's bright laughter, Ryan's relentless teasing, the Thompsons' quiet, unwavering support. But the silence from my parents felt like a fresh betrayal. A reminder that no matter how far I'd come, the scars they'd left on my heart still ached. Then one evening, as I was helping Mr. Thompson change the oil in his old truck, my phone buzzed again. I wiped my hands on a rag, my pulse quickening as I pulled it from my pocket. It was another message from my mom. "Hey Jake, sorry for the late response. Things have been a bit crazy. We're actually in town this weekend if you want to grab that lunch. Just let us know." I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched, my heart twisting with a painful mix of hope and resentment. They were in town. They wanted to see me. I didn't respond right away. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, the weight of their words pressing down on my chest as I forced myself to focus on the task at hand. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the cracks in the ceiling, I turned their message over and over in my mind. I thought about the years of silence, the photos of their carefree, picture-perfect life, the hollow ache they'd left in my heart. And then I made my decision. The next morning, I texted them back. "Sure, let's do lunch." Saturday. Their reply came almost instantly, a flurry of cheerful, emoji-laden texts that felt painfully out of place. "Yes, can't wait to see you, so proud of you, Jake." I felt my stomach churn, a bitter taste rising in the back of my throat as I stared at the screen. Proud of me for what? For surviving without them. For piecing my life back together after they shattered it. I took a deep breath, my fingers trembling as I typed out my final reply. "See you then." As I hit send, a strange, unfamiliar sense of calm settled over me. I didn't know what the lunch would bring, what kind of awkward, painful conversations lay ahead, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready. I was done letting them control my story. Done letting their absence define me. I had a life now, a real one, filled with people who cared about me, who showed up when it mattered. And no matter what happened over that lunch, I wasn't going to let them take that away from me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the scared, uncertain kid they'd abandoned had finally grown into someone stronger, someone who didn't need their approval to feel whole. And that, more than anything, felt like the kind of victory I'd been searching for all along. Story 2. I was wrongfully implicated by my relatives, disowned me, and slept with my cousin's fiancé. The genuine homewrecker's confession now revealed something they didn't anticipate. I'm James, and I'm currently 32, although this whole situation began when I was 27. Whether you like it or not, everyone knows one other's business in the little town outside of Portland where I grew up. As children, Mike, my cousin, and I were nearly inseparable. Family getaways. Up until we were in our teens, we always shared a room. We were that close together. Because our mothers are sisters, they made sure we were together all the time. Weekends, holidays, you name it. Funny enough, Mike was marrying Katie, who grew up 3 houses away from us. When she was 8 and I was 10, her family came into the neighborhood, and our families clicked right away. Do you have any idea how some neighbors become family? That's what occurred. Mike and I used to be watched by Katie's parents whenever our parents had late shifts. Additionally, we would always have those large, boisterous communal barbecues in the backyard throughout the summer. That was the type of connection. Katie resembled my younger sister. She came to me for guidance on middle school mails. I assisted her with her arithmetic assignment. All right, it was more like we battled it together. Let's laugh aloud. When she was learning, I even took her out in my old Honda Civic to teach her how to drive. May the gearbox of my automobile rest in peace. It goes without saying that everyone was ecstatic when Mike and Katie began dating when they were in college. It just made sense. The entire family was thrilled when they finally got together in their junior year, as they had been dancing around each other since high school. I'm not even making this up. When they revealed they were engaged, our grandmother started crying. On June 15, 2019, the wedding day arrives. It took place at this quite lovely location just outside of town. It wasn't very elaborate, but it was unquestionably better than my brother Mark's rustic wedding the previous year. That porta-potty scenario was difficult. I'm sorry, buddy. Along with Mike's college classmate Tom, his best man, and a couple other guys, I was one of the groomsmen. The morning began rather routinely. Since that's what you do when your favorite relative gets married, I arrived early to assist with setup. I was dressed in a very expensive blue suit. Wedding pictures, however, are eternal. After about 3 attempts to have my groomsmen boutonniere fastened, I was assisting folks in finding their way to their destinations. I was recently asked for the 3rd time by an elderly couple where the restrooms were. I was escorting them over personally, since I'm not a monster, even though they were incredibly kind, but clearly having trouble following directions. Everything went to hell at that point. Before I can completely turn around, I hear this ruckus behind me. Whoa, I saw stars because I was smacked so hard. For example, I had always assumed that was a movie quote, but no real stars. Tom and a few of other guys had followed Mike as he charged in. He glanced, I'm not even sure how to explain it, like anger, hurt, and something else combined. He simply began to complain about me. Not like one blow and you're done. This was attack mode in full swing. I'm not a little man, 6 feet 1 inch, and sometimes I go to the gym. However, Mike, who works in construction, was constantly ruining me. He's yelling things like, "How did you? I also had faith in you." I'm simply trying to keep my face safe and find out what the devil is going on in the meanwhile. At last, Tom and 2 other groomsmen were able to remove him from me. I'm bleeding all over my brand new outfit by now. And to that, may you rest in peace. Blood is difficult to remove. I think my nose is fractured and my left eye is swollen shut. I assisted an elderly couple. They're just stunned and standing there. She was in tears. I still feel horrible for destroying someone's day. I believe the venue management requested medical assistance. They also wanted to contact the police, but I was able to refuse them by biting my lip. Like, this was Mike, even if I didn't know what was going on. We were raised together. I was not going to get him arrested. A few miles away, I found myself at an urgent care facility. As she looked to see if my nose was broken, the doctor continued asking if I wanted to pursue charges. Fun fact, it was severely bruised but not broken. But I still have a little bulge there. The ice pack she gave me was so cold that it nearly hurt more than the punches. Well, not really, but wow, those medical ice packs are serious business. I received the text at that moment. You know how a character's entire world transforms when they glance at their phone in a movie? It was one of those indeed. A note from my father. The wedding has been canceled. By evening, get your belongings out of the garage. Quick context. Although I had moved out years prior, I left some belongings at my parents' house. Boxes including photos, sporting equipment, and memories from childhood. Basically, anything you don't want to discard but can't fit in a little flat. Just the way he stated it, nothing significant. I realized then that there was a big problem. I contacted my dad right away and left a voicemail. Mom is the same way. Nor did my sister answer the phone. My brother Mark was the only one to answer, and he simply asked, "How could you do this to the family?" before hanging up. No one in my family is picking up the phone, and I'm sitting in urgent care with an ice pack on my face, looking like I just had 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. As I'm trying to phone as many people as I can think of, the nurse continues giving me these pitying glances, most likely assuming I'm some guy who got into a fight in a pub at 11 in the morning. Dressed in a suit. Yes, I ultimately made the decision to simply drive to my parents' place. As an aside, it's not enjoyable to try to drive while one eye is swollen shut. Don't suggest. To check my blind area, I had to constantly moving my head. To other drivers, it most likely seemed to be some sort of insane owl. My parents' house where I grew up is where I pull up. Mom has been promising to repair the fading blue paint in the typical suburban layout for the past 5 years. My parents' cars, my brother Mark's truck, and my sister Jenny's automobile are all in the driveway. Fantastic. The entire family is present. It should be enjoyable. Still holding my key, I enter via the garage and make my way to the kitchen. Do you know how it feels to enter a room and hear everyone instantly stop talking? Yes, that is multiplied by around 1,000 mothers seated at the kitchen island. By the coffee maker dads. Jenny is on the counter where she always is. Despite being 25, she still sits there as if she were 12 while Mark is resting against the refrigerator. Mom's initial reaction is to gasp. Not in a subdued soap opera-style way. What it could do to your face, my God. Then she responds right away, "But how could you, James? How could you harm the family in this way?" I already had a terrible headache, but the whiplash from worry to accusation made it worse. At that point, they finally explained the situation to me. It seems that Katie and I have been enjoying a sexy relationship. Yes, that Katie from high school, the one who used to tease me about my acne. The person who assisted me in choosing a birthday gift for my first genuine girlfriend. In her college graduation speech, the individual who mentioned me by name essentially referred to me as her older brother. They said we had been skulking around for months. I genuinely burst out laughing rather than laughing with a split lip like a pro tip does. Even though it aches a lot, I couldn't help it since it was so absurd. My own brother Mark, who served as the best man at my wedding prior to my divorce, came at that time. Another story entirely. This is irrelevant. Throws this duffel bag at my feet after grabbing it from behind the couch. Trying to sound tough like he's in a movie, he says, "Get your stuff and get out." Perhaps half of my belongings were taken from the garage by the bags. Later, I discovered that he had simply taken random items, including my old baseball cards, but had left all of my high school and college pictures behind. Many thanks, my friend. I made an effort to clarify, clearly stating repeatedly that this was crazy. Requesting evidence, attempting to ascertain the source of this. Dad simply kept shaking his head and saying things like, "How could you do this to Mike? We trusted you." Mom refused to give me a glance. Jenny sat there in silence, even though she usually talks enough to keep the whole family entertained. I questioned them about their evidence. How did they react? We simply know that. That's all there is to it. They didn't have any text screenshots because none existed. There aren't any pictures of us together other than your typical family pictures from the past 15 or more years. Nothing. They simply knew. The worst thing. These are my acquaintances. My parents taught me to always be honest, who, when I lied about finishing my science project in 8th grade, actually grounded me for a month. Since I was the sensible one in the family, Jenny used to confide in me about all of her issues. Mark is too frugal to hire movers, so I assisted him in moving apartments 3 times. They all simply concluded that I was at fault. No inquiries were made. I attempted to contact Katie, but it went straight to voicemail. Sent her a text. No answer. Called the home of her parents. They did still have a landline, yes. When I phoned, Mr. H said he would contact the police if I ever called again. There was genuine Christian conduct. Mr. Everyone is worthy of forgiveness, H. I left my folks' house in a stupor. Didn't even take the sack Mark threw at me. Just got in my car and drove. I ended up at Murphy's, this pub downtown I'd been going to for trivia night every Thursday for like 4 years. The bartender Dave takes one glance at my expression and starts pouring my normal whiskey sour. Basic, I know. Then Dave abruptly tells me I have to go when Mike's college friend saw me when he comes in for his shift. I'm apparently no longer welcome there. Cool, very nice. I tried contacting Katie once more after driving home to my apartment. Nothing. My phone is currently overflowing with texts from unidentified family members and friends. Everybody has a viewpoint. We were too near, and everyone knew it. All of a sudden, there was suspicion whenever Katie and I spoke or spent time together. After college, I assisted her in moving apartments at that time. We were obviously hooking up since her partner at the time made it easier for me to conveniently forget that I needed to switch off my phone. I just sat there with a bag of frozen peas on my face in my dimly lit flat. The urgent care ice pack was dissolved, trying to understand how in around 6 hours my whole existence had fallen apart. On Monday, I phoned in ill to work. How would you explain to your boss that your face resembles the punching bag of a professional boxer? Since your cousin believes you are having an affair with his fiancée? Yes, I didn't want to have that talk. The weeks that followed were a living misery. It isn't until your family decides you're dead that you understand how intertwined your existence is with them. Give a brief example. On Monday morning, I attempted to attend my usual gym. I thought that working out could help me decompress. Can you guess who's there? Steve Mike's gym mate, who reportedly now runs the establishment. My membership is being evaluated all of a sudden and I should try somewhere else. The entire town seemed to be engaged in a perverse game of 6 degrees of separation. However, James, my usual coffee shop, was all screwed up. Katie's cousin's best friend is the barista. Mike's parents attend church with the proprietor of the neighborhood grocery shop. My cleaning appointment was even canceled by my fucking dentist. Mike's nephew or whatever plays Little League with his child. The work environment was enjoyable as well. My supervisor had to ask me why I appeared to have been in a bar brawl. I made an effort to be evasive, but Susan from accounting obviously overheard. By lunchtime, everyone in the workplace was aware. I was summoned to HR, because it seems like someone is grateful. Susan was worried about how I was acting. I had to give this 23-year-old HR an explanation. She stared at me as if I were a soap opera villain, but I told her that no, I wasn't having improper relationships with anybody. After around a week, I was able to contact Katie at last. That initial call was as hard as a nuclear blast. She screamed at me for wrecking her life, and I retaliated by saying that my life was also wrecked. But yeah, I did weep sometime in between the screaming and the sobbing. You can judge me all you want. In fact, we began to listen to one another. Her version of events turned out to be far worse than mine. She had essentially been excommunicated by her deeply religious parents. The whole "you're dead to us" thing. In an attempt to have her officially excommunicated from the church, her father even contacted their priest. Warning, no Mr. H. Her mother had already placed all of her childhood belongings in trash bags and placed them on the front porch. Very elegant. Additionally, Katie's work environment was a nightmare. She worked as a project manager for a large downtown marketing company, but Mike's mom's side cousin was her team lead. All of her assignments were abruptly redirected, and she was receiving reprimands for her lack of concentration at work. Yes, consider why she might not be paying attention while everything in her life was falling apart. We began exchanging notes via SMS because it felt too dangerous. The last thing we wanted was for someone to overhear and spread additional gossip. Neither of us knew where these charges originated. People would just respond with phrases like "everyone knows" if we asked them to provide evidence. Or it was clear. Such as, what was clear that we could genuinely have a discussion without it being strange and that we had known each other since we were little. I ran into Mike at the petrol station the one time I was able to round a corner. Pumping gas didn't exactly allow him to flee. "I saw how you looked at her and I looked at her," he said. "Do you mean me?" Since she was essentially my sister, I regarded her in the same manner as I did Jenny. "Is there anything you remember from my parents' garage in that duffel bag?" Yes, I did return to retrieve the remaining items. Mom had packed everything up and put it in the garage about 2 weeks later. Tossed everything in at random without even labeling the boxes. I discovered vintage Christmas decorations mixed in with pictures from my high school graduation. It had some outdated sporting equipment and my college certificate. Cool. Very cool, Mom. The aftermath on social media was entertaining as well. Nearly every member of the family blocked me. I had assisted Katie's sister with her college applications, and she shared this ambiguous status update about snakes in the family, which received around 200 responses. Suddenly, I was getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to since high school, saying they always sensed something wasn't right with me. I began receiving sporadic messages and calls from unidentified numbers. My number was apparently shared in a family group chat by someone who was probably Katie's brother. After receiving a ton of nice messages calling me everything from a home wrecker to, well, you know what, I had to change my phone. After a while, Katie and I understood we had to go. We were suffocating in this place. Nothing we said or did would change the fact that everyone had already found us guilty. People would undoubtedly see us and believe it confirmed everything, so we couldn't even get together to discuss it face to face. The act of defending myself against something I didn't do wore me out. How can a negative be proven? How can you demonstrate that something did not occur? It isn't feasible. Furthermore, it seems like everyone we knew assumed we were guilty since we were unable to establish our innocence. I've been living a hermit lifestyle and getting strange stares from DoorDash drivers for nearly 2 months. They probably heard that I was that man. I made the decision that enough was enough. At work, I applied for a transfer. Fortunately, Seattle is home to offices for my employer. Surprisingly, my manager was nice with it. To be honest, they probably just wanted to get rid of the office turmoil. Before we left town, Katie and I had our final talk. We agreed that it would be best to part ways. While she chose Chicago, I chose Seattle. We communicated via Instagram, but that was all. To be cautious, they unfollowed one another on all other platforms. We didn't need anyone to take screenshots and spread false information regarding our continued covert activities. It was intriguing to move to Seattle. Try telling prospective roommates why you're changing towns at the age of 27, and essentially without any furniture. First place went to this small, really expensive apartment on Capitol Hill, but it was mine and no one there knew who I was or what I had been up to. That type of freedom is incalculable. I made a fresh start. New email address, new phone number. My last one was inundated with subscription signups, so I had to stop using it. Very mature men. I even deleted my previous PlayStation account because I was receiving abusive comments from several of Mike's pals via the game chat. The person who did the work was really quite good. Being the new guy has the advantage that no one inquires about your background too much. I just informed folks that I needed a vacation. Not really a lie, is it? I poured myself into work and began going to the gym on a daily basis. A new chain instead of the one I had before. Evidently made an effort to establish a routine. I discovered the Crocodile Hip Club that hosted Wednesday trivia evenings. The atmosphere was different from Murphy's at home, but at least the bartenders didn't treat me like the devil, so that was a plus. I started visiting on a daily basis, made some good friends, and felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. After then, things changed with the work BBQ. It was the summer of 2021. It's one of those few ideal days in Seattle when it's not too hot or rainy. Jake, one of my co-workers, was entertaining at his Ballard home. I nearly skipped it. Even though I still struggled in social situations with large groups, I felt obligated to Jake since he had helped me navigate the Seattle bus system when I first got here. Amy and I met there. She was a yoga class acquaintance of Jake's wife. Do you recall those scenes in movies where the main character kind of loses focus when they see someone? Yes, bullshit. In reality, she overheard me discussing correct frisbee throwing technique with Jake's dog in an incredibly heated exchange. Even though it wasn't my best moment, we managed to chat as a result. You could easily chat to her. Didn't take that action. People in the Seattle Freeze are courteous yet aloof. In the end, we spent around 2 hours speaking about unrelated topics while sitting on Jake's porch. Podcasts on true crime appeal to her. Yes, I realize how ironic my stupid comments about Seattle traffic are. After that third date, we began dating really rapidly. I had to tell her everything I knew. Lies can't be used to create anything genuine, can they? So I explained everything. Everything, the wedding, the charges, the family conflict. I assumed that she would flee. She simply listened instead. Listening, in fact, asked inquiries that demonstrated her desire to comprehend rather than pass judgment. That truly sucks, she remarked once I was done. Do you want some ice cream? And for some reason, that was the ideal answer. The peculiar aspect, she became an Instagram follower of Katie. I had talked about having little contact. It turns out that they both have an obsession with the Crime Junkie podcast. They start DMing about episodes all of a sudden. The next thing I know, some other real crime lovers have joined them in a virtual book club. Every other week, they debate whatever they're reading over wine and snacks on Zoom calls. Katie's life also improved. Through her job in Chicago, she got to know Chris. He is a software developer of some sort, and it seems that he cannot create code without at least 3 monitors. Amy's remarks. In their book club, they discuss a variety of topics, but he seems like a kind guy, shows her respect, avoids drawing irrational assumptions. You are familiar with the fundamentals. Perhaps everything occurred for a purpose, it began to seem. It was still awful. Don't get me wrong. Losing my hometown and relatives. There are still days when I long for my mother's food or wonder how my nieces and nephews have changed over the years. However, I've created something worthwhile here. True pals that genuinely have faith in me. A listening girlfriend. A life that truly belongs to me. The irony is that I really enjoy Seattle. I'm superior than Portland. Me. I was constantly trying to make everyone happy in Portland, being cautious around family drama. I just reside in Seattle. Leaves for work, engages in video game play, introduces Amy to different eateries, exists without having to watch me all the time. Katie told me that her parents continue to disparage me at church. I am apparently their warning about wolves in sheep's clothes or whatever. Cool, that's good to know. They are still discussing me 5 years later. Incredibly healthy, Mr. and Mrs. H. And there I was enjoying life in Seattle to the fullest. Well done. Fantastic girlfriend. Even began enrolling in lessons on cookery. As it happens, I'm a spaghetti. The remaining items are currently being worked on. Then last month happened, and all of a sudden it felt like the past had returned. Like an unpleasant hangover. On a Tuesday, it began. Since her employer went remote after COVID and never returned, Amy spends the most of her days working from home. For lunch, she typically walks down the street to this Mediterranean restaurant. They manufacture shawarma, which is essentially crack in a sandwich. Something is wrong when she arrives home that day. This notice is affixed to our door. Not to apologize for missing your delivery letter. Or a lawn maintenance flyer. Yes, keep leaving those, but we live in an apartment. A simple white paper that simply states that we must speak. Tonight, I'll be back. Nothing, no number, no name. My name is on the mailbox right now. Amy is not on the lease because she retained her previous residence as a rental. Amy concluded that it was for me. She seldom calls me at work since she detests phone calls and prefers texting instead. She's talking so rapidly that she forgets to take a breath in between words, and I can see she's terrified out. Because who wouldn't leave work early? When I arrive home, Amy is clutching her old college softball bat and has all the doors shut. She still has a mean swing and plays Division I softball at Washington State University. She constantly kicks my ass when we practice batting cages. However, she was enough frightened to grasp the bat that struck differently. That night, we waited till the wee hours. We binge-watched some pointless Netflix series as Amy stressed baked 3 batches of cookies or her go-to when she's nervous. In reality, none of us was observing. No one arrived. The following night was the same. We were beginning to suspect that it may have been an odd joke or an incorrect address. Around 8:30 on Friday night, it occurred. When someone came on the door, we had just completed supper and ordered takeout because neither of us wanted to cook. My stomach dropped when I gazed through the people. Mike is standing there wearing clothes that appear to be from yesterday. He sways slightly as if he's either inebriated or extremely exhausted, and it's obvious that he hasn't shaven in days. Or both. Amy picks up her bat. After telling her that it wasn't required, I opened the door without arguing and left the chain in place. If he went into full-on anger mode again, the security chain definitely wouldn't stop him, but I reasoned that it was better than nothing. This is how the discussion unfolded. Mike? Hello, may I enter me? Not at all. Mike, I simply want to speak, guy. Come on. I ended up in urgent care the last time you wanted to talk to me. Mike's eyes are on his feet. Yes. Regarding that, I come to make amends. Me. I accept your apology. Farewell. I began to shut the door. Hold on, Mike. Now I know the truth. Almost anything. Me. Great tale. Not allowing you in yet. I must also apologize to Katie. Mike. Could you tell me how to reach her? Me. In fact, I laughed. Yes, it isn't taking place. Please, Mike. All I want to do is put things right. Me. You have 5 years to correct the situation. Silence for 5 years. What precisely are you anticipating when you arrive at my door now? He persisted in attempting to speak, but I was fed up. I informed him that I would inform Katie that he was attempting to get in touch with her and that she was free to decide whether or not to speak with him. I closed the door after that. Via the door. My mom wanted to chat, so I heard him say something about unblocking her. Amy was still gripping her bat like she was ready for baseball season when I returned to the living room. I immediately phoned Katie. Thought she should be aware. All of a sudden, Mike was reaching out. Like me, she was thrown. She made it very apparent that she didn't want me to give Mike her information, and I understood that completely. My mind was more disturbed by the entire situation than I had anticipated. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Mike arriving in that state. He had a rugged appearance, not rumpled and unshaven, but defeated, as it were. 5 years ago, the same man tried to reorganize my face. Amy was outstanding through it all. She's generally the silly, easygoing person who dances and makes terrible jokes while cleaning the dishes. However, she went into full protective mode that week. The next day, she fitted a Ring doorbell. Although we were tenants, she stated that she would rather forfeit the deposit than feel insecure. Instead of working from home, she started working from the coffee shop downstairs. She even phoned her brother, a Tacoma police officer, to inquire about restraining orders as a precaution. Several days passed before I made a decision regarding my mother. When I eventually cleared her number, I texted her rather than phoning. "You want to chat, I hear." Figured they now had the ball in their court. They can't just walk up and expect things to be all right after 5 years of stillness. My mother began texting instead of calling after Mike's unexpected arrival. She must have realized I wasn't prepared for it. This is the outcome of the initial conversation. "We want you to return home, Mom. I am at home. You understand what I mean, Mom. We want you back in the family and to apologize." Me. "What caused this?" "We now know what actually occurred, Mom. It took me barely 5 years." "Cool. I was being petty, I admit it. I'm being sued." She finally spills it after some back and forth. 2 years following the nuptials. Jessica Mike wasn't married. This chick was from his gym. She's the person I saw at Katie's wedding, it turns out. The bridesmaid is uneasy as she sits by herself. Now it makes sense. It seems like their marriage was doomed from the start. Ongoing conflict. During one of their most heated arguments, trust concerns the works. Around half a year ago, Jessica made a mistake, said something along those lines. To spend my marriage hearing about Emily, I didn't ruin their connection. Yes, take a moment to process that. As it happened, Jessica had fabricated the entire incident. Everything. She was attracted to Mike, chose to eliminate the competition after noticing how close he was to Katie. She gave Mike all these information about alleged meetings and private communications and claimed to have seen Katie and myself together. But she was unable to produce any evidence when Mike asked for it, because it never occurred, you know. The worst part is still to come. Everyone in the family simply accepted Mike's claims when he presented them to them. No inquiries were made. Their reasoning: if Mike wasn't certain, he wouldn't wreck his own wedding. Because it seems that being certain entails trusting a random gym chick more than folks you've known your entire life. Not a single member of either family took the time to speak to Katie or me directly. Not a single person considered or sought for proof. Hey, before we ruin their life entirely, perhaps we should hear their side of the story. The best part of the worst. It seems that Jessica had a history of this when everything was revealed. Tom, Mike's friend, recalled doing something similar at her last gym. Alleged harassment against a trainer for refusing to leave his girlfriend for her. However, no one had considered looking into it before Mike used my face as a punching bag. I'm not taking it as well as Katie is. She was treated like she was a sinner by all those churchgoers. Her childhood memories were actually thrown in rubbish bags by her parents. Her supervisor was the source of her misery until she was forced to resign. Nor did any of them care to check anything. You can enjoy this entertaining timeline. Wedding day disaster in June 2019. Katie and I both leave town in July 2019. Mike and Jessica begin dating in December 2019. They tie the knot in March 2020. Yes. Too hurried, I meet Amy in August 2021, and Jessica eventually acknowledges she made it all up in September 2024. October 2024. All of a sudden, everyone wants to apologize, being the family outcast for 5 solid years. 5 years of missing weddings, births, holidays, and birthdays. My nieces and nephews have been informed Uncle James is a nasty guy for the past 5 years. All because my cousin's happiness with someone else was too much for a certain girl from the gym to take. Through it all, Amy has been my pillar of support. She sat there for a minute after I told her what had happened, and then she remarked, "So you're telling me that your entire family is dumber than a box of rocks?" For the first time since I found out, it made me giggle. Katie had a less amusing answer. Straight from our phone conversation. They can accept their apologies and put them in a bad place. Katie, tell us how you truly feel. The untruth itself isn't even the worst part. It's because everyone believed it so readily. These individuals who have known me since birth have witnessed my development and are said to have loved me. All of them concluded that this tale of Katie and I was more plausible than the reality. I keep getting lengthy texts from my mom saying that they're all sorry that they should have known better and that they want to put things right. Dad even attempted to contact, but it was quickly banned. Jenny posts pictures of her children with euphoric remarks such as, they want to meet their uncle. The problem is that you can't simply go back and undo 5 years of treating someone like trash. Saying oops is horrible isn't enough to get everything returned to normal. Similar to a mirror is trust. You can attempt to put it back together if it breaks, but the fissures will always be visible. Guys, I'll keep you informed if anything occurs. I appreciate you reading. The last update. Go ahead and read it. It's this. The last update. Katie and I came to the conclusion that it was time to return home. On our own terms, we decided to meet with both families. I chose a neutral spot, this downtown coffee shop with no ties to either family. Katie was too excited to take a plane back for this alone, so she and I set up Zoom on my laptop. Her video was off, but I had her on speaker. She didn't want to see their faces, but she wanted to hear everything. You can't hold her responsible. Everyone in the gang was present. My folks, Jessica and Mike. She seems as though she would want to be somewhere else. My brothers Katie's parents and even Tom were present, most likely feeling bad about the entire best man situation where he didn't defend me. Before anybody could begin apologizing, I established some guidelines. Everything may be heard by one Katie. She is free to talk or not. 2, the meeting will end if she disconnects. 3, when I stare at you, Mike, no one touches me. 4, don't guilt trip about religion. For Katie's parents, that is. Jessica was first. She seemed well rugged. She isn't benefiting from marital issues. Her lengthy justification. She believed Katie didn't deserve Mike and she was in love with him. That's all. She basically blew up several lives for that reason. Not a major miscommunication. Not a case of identity confusion. She chose to destroy everyone else in order to have my cousin who she only desired. Actually, Mike made an effort to apologize for the punches, but who's counting? He said that he ought to have realized that he shouldn't have trusted Jessica without evidence. No, Sherlock. Do you think? Before making a big deal out of your relative, perhaps double-check things. The parents followed. Both sets. This was fascinating. When I stepped in, my mom tried to give me a hug. She looked like I had smacked her as I took a step back. Yes, well, perhaps you recall how it felt to have my childhood pictures packed away like garbage. Mom. Prior to Katie unmuting herself and quickly shutting it down, Katie's father began to say things about biblical forgiveness. Her exact words. You left my belongings in the rain after throwing them in trash bags. You have no right to quote the Bible against me. Mr. H has never previously left me stunned. It was quite remarkable. The amount of questions my children ask about me made my sister Jenny cry. That's a great story, sis. Where was this worry while you were assisting Mom with packing my belongings? When did you block me on all platforms when you described me as a terrible person to the churchgoers? The thing with family is this. They should be the ones who know you the best, have the greatest faith in you, or at least give you the benefit of the doubt. However, everyone in that room decided to assume the worst about Katie and myself. No inquiries were made. No evidence is required. Just go right to it. Yes, clearly they are secret lovers. We should ruin their life. That's precisely what I told them. I informed Jessica that she based her fleeting joy on the suffering of others. I informed Mike that his relationship with Katie was not the only thing ruined by his lack of trust. Both sets of parents now had to deal with the fact that they demonstrated to us how conditional their love was, I informed them. At the end, Katie spoke out. In some ways, her composure was worse than if she had screamed or just spoken. The fact that Jessica lied isn't the worst part. It's because none of you believed the truth was worth telling. On the basis of nothing more than rumors that never said anything about us, you kicked us out. Then she cut off. Let's get together. My parents never stopped striving to make things better. Mom is sending lengthy, heartfelt texts about forgiveness and family. It seems like Dad is telling others that he is giving me space. Regards, Dad. That one was just 5 years late. Suddenly, Katie's parents want to travel to Chicago to see her. Good luck with that indeed. Here's the problem, though. Here, Amy and I have created a fulfilling existence. Somewhere in my sock drawer is a ring. I'm going to pop the question next month, but don't tell her. Chris makes Katie happy. Both of us have true friends who genuinely have faith in us. Jobs we enjoy, lives we created from the ground up. There are instances when the family you chose is superior to the one you were born into. Broken things shouldn't always be mended. And being content without the folks who tossed you away can sometimes be the finest kind of retaliation. In this way, my cousin's wedding ruined my previous existence and unintentionally brought me to a better one.